Hello and welcome back to Dr. Logic Awkwardly Does Logic. This video is the first in a set of 3 videos which are entirely a digression from the kind of ordinary story of modal logic that we've been telling so far. I'm going to do one video each on the systems S1, S2, and S3, those weird little systems that nobody ever really talks about. So I am going to talk about them just insofar as giving you the rules of inferences, the axioms, and say a little bit about how the systems relate to each other. So I'm going to bring up my trusty whiteboard so that we can keep track of everything. But it's important to kind of keep in mind where these systems came from. They came out of an attempt to understand strict implication. So one reason why we can't just build these systems on the basis of propositional logic tautologies, as we have our other modal systems, is that propositional tautologies are based on the material implication. And there are therefore a bunch of propositional tautologies that, if you turn them into their strict equivalents, are still going to be tautologies. But if you are making strict implication your primary focus, there's going to be material implications that, in a sense, you can't express. So keep that in the back of your mind, because much of what we're going to see is that basically systems S1 to S3 are like strictified versions of propositional logic with some other modal axioms on them. So I'm going to start with the rules of inference, and these are going to be the same in each of the systems. So, once I've said them, they'll just kind of carry through as we go from S1 to S2, which is stronger, to S3, which is the strongest of the 3. So the first is essentially a type of strict modus ponens. And it says that if you can prove some formula phi, and it's necessary that phi implies psi, and you can prove this, then you can derive psi. So just like normal modus ponens, except the implication has to be necessary. The next is essentially strict substitution of equivalences. So substitution of equivalences wasn't taken as a basic rule in the systems we've seen so far. It is being taken as basic here. So this says that if phi is a theorem, and you can prove the necessary equivalence between 2 formulas, chi and gamma. And then we've got the and psi is identical to phi, except that where phi has chi as a subformula, psi possibly has gamma instead. So if all of these things are the case, then psi is itself a theorem. So again, it's exactly like our normal substitution of equivalences rule, except that the equivalence must itself be necessary. And then our third rule is actually a propositional rule. It's something that we have because we don't have propositional tautologies in the background. And it says if you have phi as a theorem and psi as a theorem, then you have phi and psi. So this rule is sometimes known as adjunction. And then we also have uniform substitution, which works exactly the same way as it does in ordinary modal logic. Then the axioms that system S1 have are the following. Most of them are, in a sense, propositional, but with the material implications turned into strict ones. So we have a whole bunch of kind of ordinary, unexceptional things, such as that it is necessary that P and Q implies Q and P. You can swap the conjunctions around. It is necessary that P and Q implies P. this axiom combined with the first one also gets you that P and Q implies Q is going to be necessary. And then we have that if P and Q and R is true, we also have that P and Q and R is true. So you've got the associativity of conjunction. Similarly, if you have P, you have the conjunction of P and P. So this is just representing another tautology, but sticking the box on the front of it. And then we have a version of a strictified version of the transitivity of the conditional. So it is necessary that if you have necessary P implies Q and necessary Q implies R, then you also have necessary P implies R. One more parenthesis. There we go. So this is essentially the strictified version of the propositional part of the system. And then we have something distinctive, kind of the modally bit. Yes, I know all of these have modal operators in them, but that comes from the strictness of the implication rather than from any other sort of modal aspect. This one is that it is necessary that P implies possibly P. Now, you might recognize P implies possibly P. This is just our theorem T1 and another version of the T axiom. So this is particularly interesting because essentially it's got this propositional component, and then we have this modalized version of the T axiom. And that is system S1. System S2 will build on this. System S3 will build on that. But join me again for my next digression video where we will talk about system S2. Until then, take care.